I'm getting the feeling that this terror, it's a clue for it. Seems to me is from my facades that I've generated. So I see that there's some characteristics of my facade that I can see in it. Yeah, there's a terror
underneath those.
Underneath it that it's protecting.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly. The type of addictions you develop are very much dependent upon the type of terror that you have. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're all related, of course. And it's interesting that once you go through the emotion, then you understand yourself pretty well. Hey, it's like, and you also understand other people pretty well too. Because the emotion of terror is what is desensitizing you to feeling other people's emotion, ironically. And the emotion of terror is what's desensitizing you to feeling your own emotion as well. You deal with the emotion of terror, and all of a sudden you're a lot more sensitive to all the nuances of emotion, the different types of emotion that everybody has around you. And so now you can feel, that person feels like this now. I didn't realise that before. Because your terror stopped you from feeling what they felt. Does that make sense? Your terror is the thing that prevents you from being sensitive in your body. It prevents you from being sensitive sexually. It prevents you from being sensitive emotionally. It prevents your body from feeling just give an example. Like Mary can just sort of, she can not touch my back at all, just touch my spirit body, and I'll have waves and waves of like pleasure all over my body, just tingling pleasure all over my body, and she's not even touching my body. Right? Now, years and years ago, that didn't happen, but now it happens. So it's a sensitization. All of you can do that. All of you can have that experience. And it's a sensitization to your body, your physical body, your spirit body, and your soul that needs to be achieved. And that's only going to be achieved by releasing terror and pain. The more you release, the more sensitive you become. You also become sensitive emotionally. You become sensitive in the sense that you can no longer take actions that are unloving. Even if you thought there might be a personal benefit, but it hurts somebody else, you'd never do it because you're too sensitive emotionally. You couldn't cope with the outcome of doing it. Does that make sense? You couldn't hurt somebody purposefully because you're too sensitive emotionally. It would hurt you even more than it hurts them. Right? So, yeah, there's a lot of advantages when it happens, but it's the terror and the pain that prevents you from having that really sensitive state. The more sensitive your state, the more pleasure you have the potential to experience. You also have the potential to experience more pain. But the likelihood of you experiencing pain is a lot less because you're in a loving state. So, like, celestial spirit's very sensitive to pain, but doesn't experience any. Because they're sensitive to any emotion. But they don't experience any because everything they do, everything they say, all the actions they take are all in harmony with love. So therefore there's no pain to be experienced. There's only pleasure to be experienced at that point. But they're just as sensitive to pain as any other person would be who's opened and become as sensitive as well. In fact, they're more so because there's no terror in them anymore to prevent the sensitivity. Do you understand? The sensitivity emotionally, physically, sexually, and in all aspects of your life is all about the amount of other emotions, pain and terror-based emotions that exist in your soul. The majority of women on the planet complain a huge amount about sexual response, right? Many women say they've not had orgasms very much at all, if at all. That it takes them a long time to have an orgasm, all these other things. Well, that's all because of the lack of sensitivity to your body. Most women are very terrified of sexual response. They're terrified of those kind of things. So of course there's a lack of sensitivity. The norm for a woman is to ejaculate just like a man. That's the norm from God's perspective. But most women are desensitized from their bodies, and so they don't do that, right? So there's a sexual sensitivity, right? So most men are desensitized emotionally, terribly emotionally desensitized. So, you know, a woman might cry in a situation, but the man's there with a blank face and he's not crying at all. But he doesn't realise the effect it's having on his pleasure and the effect it's having on his happiness. The reality is that once you address that emotion and these emotions, the sensitivity levels will go way up there about all things. Emotional, moral sensitivity, ethical sensitivity, right? Physical sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity, sensitivity about love, sensitivity of other people's emotion. You'll know what they feel. They don't have to tell you what they feel. You feel what they feel better than they feel what they feel. Unless they are just as sensitive as you. Yeah. Are you worried about that? It's great, yeah, it is great. Honestly, why do you think celestial spirits experience bliss? Right? It's because they're very, very sensitive to happy emotions. Yeah. Which also means they have to be sensitive to pain emotions. But of course they don't experience any pain because they've brought their life into harmony with God's laws, and it's only when you sin that you experience pain. So because they no longer sin, they no longer experience pain, but they're just as sensitive to pain as any person would be, as any person who's sensitive in their state would be. But they don't experience it because they're not sinning. So if you got a celestial spirit, you put him in a state like here on earth, like the 14 have happened, and then just one thing goes wrong, and any person who's one of the 14 feels like every single sin they've created is like a mountain because they're so sensitive to it. What you dismiss as nothing, they have intense emotions about. Yeah. Maybe give you some idea of what the 14 are going to have to go through with regard to experience of pain. A lot worse than what anything that you can imagine going through. Because of their sensitivity to pain, which far exceeds our first incarnation sensitivity. Yeah.